Hello, pre-algebra again. We're going to finish up the same section that we started last time. The section is actually called function notation, but the activity that we're going to learn today is actually called writing linear functions. And so we'll get started here and we'll finish out this set of lessons. Okay, so the basis that we started on last time, we talked about this function, and we talked about how f of x really just stands for y. Alright, now I know you've seen y equals mx plus b. That's slope-intercept form. So now what we have to realize, since f of x and y are essentially the same thing, f of x also equals mx plus b. Alright, if you recall, slope-intercept form allows us to graph lines as well. Okay, but it also forms that rule for your function. Remember we talked about the machine and how it always has to have a rule. Well, that's your rule right there. Okay, so keep that in mind as we get started and finishing out this lesson here. Okay, so we're going to write a linear function f of x given that m is 3 and b is negative 4. We haven't seen these things in a little while. Remember, m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. Remember, a y-intercept, if you have a line, it's that point where it crosses the y-intercept. It's also where x equals 0. Okay? So keep that in mind when we're coming up with these rules. So back to the problem here. Write a linear function for this. Well, we need two things to form an equation, or to form an equation of a line. In other words, for a linear function, we need an m and we need a b. We have those things. Okay, so the answer here, f of x equals 3x minus 4. Alright, take a look at these numbers here and where they came from here. Our b goes in this position, and our slope is our coefficient for x. Okay, now we're given a graph. Write a linear function for h of x this time. Really makes no difference whether they say f of x, h of x, anything like that. It all stands for y, given this graph. So remember, we need two things to make this. We need a slope, and we need a y-intercept, or a b. Alright? Now b is probably the easier one to start with because it's just simply where it crosses the y-axis. Looks like it crosses right here. So our b is going to be negative 2. Alright? Now, to find the slope, that's always going to be the change in the y's over the change in the x's. Okay? Or you can look at this line. And remember, lines we always read left to right. Okay? What's our change in our y's? Our y's are up and down. So if you look from this point to this point, looks like it's going down 2, so that's going to be a negative 2 over the changes of the x's. Okay, so that's going to be from this point to this point, the change along the x-axis, side to side. All going left to right, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and so that negative 2/3 is going to be our slope. When we have two things, we can make our equation or our function. Same thing. So our final answer is going to be h of x equals negative 2/3 x minus 2. We took the m, plugged it into the coefficient of x. We took the b and put it in its place. Here again, it looks strangely familiar to that old slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. A lot of background knowledge coming into play here. And in our final example, now we have a table. Okay, nothing really changes here. We still need a slope, and we still need a y-intercept. Alright, now we can start either place. remember our slope is still our change of our y's over the change of our x's. So let's start there. From negative 10 to negative 7, we have a change. All right, we know that to be 3. And we're going up by 3, so that's going to stay positive. Let's check it again here. From negative 7 to negative 4 is still 3. So from that, our change of our y's is going to be 3. Now we need to go up top and figure out what the change of our x's is going to be. Negative 2 to 0, well, that's a plus 2. 0 to 2, all right, now that checks out. So our slope is going to be 3 over 2. All right, now b. What was b again? Oh, that was where x is 0. We have something right here that tells us where x is 0, what's y. Because remember, if we're talking on a coordinate plane, our y-intercept, and we have this line, where it crosses the y-axis is this right here. What's the value of the x-axis? Well, that's going to be right here. It's always going to be 0. For that reason, it's pretty easy to see that our y-intercept is going to be negative 7. We have the two things we need to write our linear function. Before we called this an equation. All right? So our f of x is equal to 3/2 x minus 7. Okay. Now, what if they do not give us this 0 for the x value? What if they don't have that? All right, what we can do here, let's use something different. Let's use this one right here. All right, what if we need to find out what our slope is? So if we can put in f of x is equal to 3/2 x plus b. That's what we know. All right, we know our slope. Our f of x we don't know, or in other words our y, and our b we do not know. But if we go back up here to the red square, we know that this 4 is an x value. So we can put that in right here. And then we have a y, which is negative 1. Well, the y is just the f of x, excuse me. Okay, so I'm going to extend this page. I'll probably lose my table here, but we'll keep working on the red problem here. So negative 1 equals 3/2. We substitute 4 in for x plus b. Okay, because remember, we're trying to find out what b is in the case that we're not given a 0 in the x value. All right, we're going to go ahead and multiply 3/2 times 4 over 1. We can cross cancel that. So that'll get us negative 1 equals 6 plus b. We're trying to find out what b is, so I'm going to subtract 6. It's going to be negative 7 equals b. Or in other words, b equals negative 7. Okay, and so it comes out to the same thing, if you recall, as what we had right here. Okay, so that's what you do if you're not given this nice, neat 0 in the x and a clear-cut y-intercept. Okay. Oh, we have one more. Now we're going to write a linear function, g of x, given that g of 0 equals 9 and g of 3 equals negative 6. Now you remember here, when they put this number in parentheses, that's just your x value. All right? So then what that equal to is your y. So this is our x, and this is our y. All right? We're still looking for two things. We're looking for an m and a b. In this case, we're looking for that rule. We're looking for the rule for the machine. All right? We're looking for this linear function. How do we find slope? Well, slope is the change of the y's over the changes of the x's. Okay, so let me rewrite this as ordered pairs. It's the same thing. Once upon a time, you were given two ordered pairs, 0, 9, and 3, negative 6. If you were asked to find slope, of that, we would go change of the y's over the changes of your x. So what I might do here is I might go negative 6 minus 9 over 3 minus 0. And that should equal negative 15 over 3. So that should equal negative 5. Now that's my slope. Okay, so negative 5 is my slope, and now I need to find b. Okay, now remember, we talked about this where x is 0. Well, look up here, guys. X is 0 right here in this one. Okay, so that tells me b is going to be, yep, you guessed it, it's going to be 9. Okay, so now we have a slope, now we have a y-intercept. So my final answer, all right, now remember this is g of x, so g of x equals negative 5x plus 9. Everybody see how I plugged that in? This went down to here, that went to there. Okay, let's do a couple from your assignment here. I'll do 3 examples. Okay, your first one is going to be write a linear function, or write that rule, given that m is 3 and b is negative 4. Alright, and so f of x, alright, we're still referring back to the y equals mx plus b stuff. Okay, so m is going to be 3, whereas our x goes right behind it, plus negative 4. Okay, you could also write that f of x is equal to 3x minus 4. Same thing there. Free answers, I'm giving them out. Alright, on the second page, we have an example with a graph here. Remember, we need an m and we need a b. A b is where it's crossing the y-axis. Here's our y-axis. This one's pretty easy. It's right here. Okay? So b is going to be 2. Now, how do we find the slope of this? It's the change of the y's over the changes of the x. And that's going to be 0 minus 2. Okay? 0 and 2. Divided by negative 3 minus 0. Okay, 0 minus 2 is negative 2. Negative 3 minus 0 is negative 3. So that's going to be 2/3. Negative divided by a negative yields a positive. So now I've just found my slope to be 2/3. All we have to do is to write our function. In other words, to write our equation. Alright, we're dealing with h of x. You always got to make sure how they want it. H of x equals 2/3 x plus 2. Final answer. Okay, final example. Write a linear function given the table. Alright, so we're just kind of going through things here. Alright, same thing. We need an m. We need a b. Okay? Slope first. Changes of the y's. How does it change from 8 to 2? Well, the difference is 6. Is it going up or is it going down? Is it a positive change or is it a negative change? In this case, it's a negative change. We're going down. And then we better check ourselves. 2 to negative 4, well, that's a negative 6. So our change of our y's is negative 6 divided by the changes of our x's. Well, what's our x's change? Negative 2 to 0. Well, that's a positive change of 2. We better check ourselves up through the next interval. 0 to 2 is a 2 again. Alright, so the change of our x's each time is 2. Alright, that's going to be a negative 3, so we're halfway there. Negative 3 for our slope. Now if we look up here for our y-intercept, does it give us the easy way out? Sure does. Look at this one. Alright, y-intercept, where x is 0. What is the y where x is 0? Well, that's 2. Alright, now we have everything we need to write a rule, to write a function. F of x equals negative 3x plus 2. Okay, so on those examples, we talked about writing linear functions given our slope and our y-intercept. Then we are given from the graph. And lastly, writing a linear function given the table. So that should get you a good start. I did the first one. Don't be afraid to watch the video again if you need it. And remember, function is basically the same as our slope-intercept equation. Have a good week. We'll talk to you later.